I am not going to sacrifice my family life just to get that promotion. I will work hard, I'll get what I can, and everything else, then I will find other ways to make up for it on my own. So I started to question, why did I want a promotion? Was it just a title, or was it the money as well? And I realized that the money played a very big part of it. So if I could not get a promotion or a full raise to the level that the delivery needs to be at in terms of my time and commitment, then can I make the money elsewhere? As an employee who was striving to break out of the rat race, I remember my very first article that went viral was how I saved $20,000 in a year while earning a paycheck of $2,000 take-home pay. So that was my first beginning, and fast forward to today, it has been 11 years. I'm glad to say that I have reached that goal. I have broken out of the rat race. So now work is actually optional for me.
Hello and welcome to Make It Work, the bi-weekly podcast where we uncover inspiring stories of modern working mamas in Asia who have redefined their career paths whilst putting family first.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Make It Work. And today I have a very unique guest. This is Fiona Cher, better known as SG Budget Babe on her social media handle. Dawn is someone I actually had been following for a little bit of time during my career transition to learn more about finances. And she is one of the first few female Finfluencers, financial influencers in Singapore. She's also a mom of two. And a lesser known fact is that she has a day job as a background checks a professional, basically screening for foreign talent for the Singapore government to check the real versus the fake. And so you can see that Dawn is a very multi-hyphenate mom. And I am so excited to have her share her story on how she transitioned from full-time corporate into doing what she's doing today as an influencer, and then also how she juggles the time with two young children. So very excited to have you, Dawn. Welcome to Make It Work. So hi, Make It Work listeners. My name is Dawn, and some of you might know me online as SG Budget Babe, having kind of grown up under the public eye for over the last decade, where I started sharing my financial journey, first as an employee who was striving to break out of the rat race, and how I remember my very first article that went viral was how I saved $20,000 in a year while earning a paycheck of $2,000 take-home pay. So that was my first beginning, and fast forward to today, it has been 11 years. I'm glad to say that I have reached that goal. I have broken out of the rat race. So now work is actually optional for me. I continue to work in both my corporate day job as well as my social media and my writing, really because it fuels me and it aligns with who I am, what I want to do, what I want to see my children watch me do, and the life that I want to lead and build for myself. So yeah, that's me. And during the day, I'm now working with a background check company. I've actually been in the industry for almost a decade as well. And I am a licensed PI, a private investigator, just that I don't use that license a lot because, sadly speaking, the truth is in Singapore, a lot of the PI work and demand is for a certain type of jobs that I'm not very comfortable doing. I want to do things that are about positivity, meaningfulness, happiness, and alignment. So I don't use that as much, but it has been very useful in my corporate work because the skills that we learn when you investigate things, and that all comes together. For those of you who have actually read my story, I'm also an author of the book called Take Back Control of Your Money, and you can find it in all leading bookstores as well as Amazon. And in that book, I shared about my beginnings, which was in university. I studied investigative journalism, media, and the investigative journalism parts was what really appealed to me. Unfortunately, because that was not a very viable career in Singapore, and my parents were against me becoming a wartime correspondent and an investigative journalist on Frontline. So I didn't get to pursue that. But very interestingly, life has brought me down this route. And I get to do what I love right now, which is teaching people about how I overcame my own financial limitations and built my wealth, and helping them to find their ways to build their own wealth too, while working my corporate job at the same time.
Yeah. And how old are your kids again, though?
So I have two boys. They're very mischievous. And they're 4 and 7 right now.
Amazing. So thank you so much for sharing all that. I knew that I will miss something out, like the fact that you've written a book and that you did investigative journalism. I'm sure it's helpful for how you actually look into equity research, right? Because that is your main thing of how you invest and have grown your wealth very successfully. It does come in handy, but I will also say that these skills are not things that people can't learn, right? I just have a
Mm.
edge because I studied that in university. I liked it. So when you like something and you keep learning a skill, you just get naturally better with it over time, right? A 1% improvement every day does lead and compound significantly to make you a little bit more skilled than other people who don't put in that same work or do not have that passion to keep going. But it's not difficult because understanding and analyzing equities are things that you don't have to be an investigative journalist nor trained in that to be able to do. There are people who are better than me who have never studied investigative journalism in their life, like Warren Buffett or Charlie Munger, right? They did not start from those backgrounds. So yeah, we can definitely learn whatever we want to as long as it's aligned with what we want to do and achieve.
So you are wearing so many hats, Dawn. Do you have regular rhythms or routines that are really vital to you thriving well? And can you bring us into a week in your life?
Every day and every week in my life actually looks really different. So I don't have a fixed routine. I know some, when you study high performers, you hear them talk about how, oh yeah, my routine is I wake up at 5 a.m., I hit the gym, and then after that I go have breakfast, go to work, right? And I work until 6 p.m. and then I cut off and I go for date nights or whatever, family time, and then sleep and repeat. So I actually don't have that. And the reason why I don't is because my work is very fluid. So it needs flexible. But the problem of such flexibility also means that it is very easy to lose discipline and just be a couch potato if you don't learn how to manage that flexibility in a way that works for you. So what I found to really work for me is this concept called time blocking. So I schedule my days or my weeks around key events, conferences, classes I have to teach, or my kids' birthday parties, graduation, performances, etc. All these key events are then put in, and everything else that I need to do that are a little bit more flexible gets keyed in to shift here and there whenever it needs to. So let's take, for example, my workout. I wish I could be as disciplined as some high performers and say I go to the gym every day at a fixed time. But the truth is, I don't. I know that I want to try and work out at least 4 to 5 times a week if I want to. So whether that workout happens in the morning or in the evening would then depend on what I have planned for that day. So if I have a media event to go to or a webinar to conduct, like yesterday, I taught a class to hundreds of people about how to invest their CPF, and that was in the evening. So prior to that, I knew I already had to be back in the late afternoon to get ready for it and to do, your tech runs and stuff. So what I did was I did my workout in the morning instead. But a few days before that, my workout was actually at night because in the morning I had back-to-back meetings all the way. And I didn't have time to squeeze in any classes or even hit the gym. So it wasn't until my kids were back home and my in-laws came over to look after them that I could sneak out for a short, 30 to 40 minute session at the gym. So that's how I try to do it. Very important events form the main base of my schedule and everything else gets scheduled after it.
So you've talked about some of the big important things that you are immovable in that sense. So like your kid and work related things. So everything else is kind of optional, would you say?
I wouldn't
And
say
maybe your gym.
yeah, movable. Things with deadlines and really core priorities such as my family, then it would get like key attention. And then for sometimes I put in things that don't get done. So if I were to give an example, 3 days ago I had something that I scheduled for myself on my calendar. It's one of those admin tasks that you just gotta do, but there is no real key deadline. So I didn't get to do it on that day because I got sidetracked with something else that was more urgent that cropped up at work. I moved it to yesterday. I still didn't get it done yesterday. So I moved it today, but then something cropped up again and I'm not gonna get to work on it today. So I'm gonna shift it to tomorrow. So I will just keep shifting things. And this is not a perfect way by any means, of course, but I think for one of the most common answers I get outside of finances is always people asking me, Dawn, how do you wear so many hats and how do you do so many things? And this is really the answer. I just make sure whatever needs to get done gets scheduled. And if it has to move, I move it to another day and I really do it.
So how do you work this out with your spouse as well? Having, such a fluid schedule and young kids. Is he the one who's maybe more stable, more fixed in that sense?
No, my husband also works a flexible job.
Wow.
So it is really important for both of us that things that are top priority has to be in the calendar. And then as a parent, I think what you also realize is there are going to be so many things that you just cannot predict. For example, I had to teach my kids spelling, so that was in my calendar. And after teaching him spelling for 4 consecutive days, the morning of his spelling test, he woke up with a major eye infection. So suddenly we had to bring him to the doctor because the school wasn't going to accept him and we needed an MC. But I had a full day of meetings because I had already planned out that, oh, my kid's going to be in school at this time. I have a 9 a.m. all the way to 4 p.m. The doctor closes at 12 noon and opens again in the evening. But then I have another 5 p.m. to 11 p.m. So there was no way I could bring. So then my husband had his own plans, but he moved his things to bring my kid to the doctor because we needed to get an MC and submit to the teacher by a certain time. Right. So stuff like that. I think that's where we really work as a team, and things that we have to really make sure we are there for, such as our kids' birthdays or graduation parties, we will make sure that everything else comes after that.
Yeah. I think, yeah, we're super reliant on our calendars now. And it says more about us actually than, other things. My husband was just asking Gemini, because he has the pro version, to like analyze his calendar for whether he has enough downtime and stuff like that. And it's very insightful actually to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So
That's
yeah,
how I get, right? AI tools now that can fill up
mm,
calendar for you, or like
yeah.
spot gaps and help you fill that up. But I think that really works when you have stuff that are a bit more fixed.
Mm,
Like when you're a mom, you just can't, like, your kid is sick. What are you gonna do? Right? You have to move and drop a lot of things to make sure you take care of your kid, and or at least arrange for some last minute care if you have something else to work for. So
mm.
yeah, I think this is one method that works for me. I have friends who do a different approach where they wake up in the morning early and then they plan out their day. But I realized that the people who do that, at least in my own circle, none of them have kids. Because if I plan out my day, I can tell you a lot of those plans are gonna get disrupted by my kids, especially when they come home. They just want someone to spend some time with them. So I need to block out and make sure that I do have some time to spend with my kids.
Mm. Yeah. And what time do you sleep?
It varies. It really varies. Like if there's a major market crash, then you'll see me sleeping at 3,
Right.
4 a.m. If there's nothing happening, sometimes it's early. So it really depends on whatever happens on the schedule. I think the art of scheduling is something that everyone has to figure out for themselves.
So how do you bake in, times of rest? Do you go on a holiday? Do you do like a retreat for yourself? How do you recharge?
I recharge at my favorite workout classes. So my workout is also my downtime. I also indulge in like my favorite dramas when I have time. If I can, I'll watch maybe one short episode every day. If I can't, then I'll skip some days and just watch it whenever I can. And I think more importantly is our perception of what is downtime. Yeah. So downtime to me is something that fuels me. And that can also be a very short, 15 minutes listening to my favorite music at night before I fall asleep. And that can be my downtime. Yeah, so I don't
Mm,
have to very deliberately, I don't schedule my downtime because I would still do something every day to enjoy a little bit of downtime. But yes, like everyone else, I do have holidays. I plan for these in advance as well because I want to make sure that I give my kids a happy childhood. And we are quite deliberate about where we bring them for their holidays and what we want them to learn or experience on their holidays. So these usually also get booked month in advance, and we'll
mm.
out check work that clash with those trips or those dates.
Right. Thank you so much, Dawn, for sharing this aspect of your life of how you try to schedule and arrange everything. Can you bring us back to your time when you were without kids at least and were, like you said, trying to figure out a way out of corporate life? Bring us back to that time when you started writing that article.
So it all started because a lot of our relationship with money is also connected to how we were brought up and our childhood experiences. And in my childhood growing up, money was never enough. I lived through many periods where we had to calculate and make decisions based on a lack of money rather than an abundance of. So we could not make certain moves because we simply could not afford it. I've watched my mom lose her job, got retrenched during the Asian financial crisis, which was hard. And watching my parents struggle, watching them bicker over money, it cemented my belief for myself that I was going to build a life for myself where money is going to be the last thing that affects my decisions. I want to make decisions based on whether I want it, whether it's good for me, for my kid, what are the benefits that it will give us, rather than simply focusing on what does this cost us monetarily. So that was why from my early 20s onwards, I was always very determined and I knew I wanted to break out of the rat race. I just didn't know how. So when I stumbled across investing and I learned that investing early and compounding that over time will help you to build wealth steadily. So it's not a get rich quick scheme, but it's steadily and for the long term that really appealed to me. So I started back then. I wasn't sure. I think like every young person or anyone who learns something for the first time, you will always be skeptical whether it works, right? So I was consulting. I was looking at a lot of the folks who were older, people who have invested and who made it. People who invested and did not make it, they lost money. And hearing from both sides to understand how things work, what was the differences between these groups of people, and then starting my own journey. So I met a lot of people who invested, kept at it, and became financially free. So I knew that if I simply followed that advice, I would probably reach the goal as well. But the how to get there, the things to invest in, that's going to change from time to time. So applying the steps and then figuring out the skills to assess and look at market conditions that just develop over time. So yeah, that was how it was in my 20s.
And you decided to start writing about it.
Yes, that was completely coincidental actually. Because as I mentioned, I studied journalism in school, right? And my childhood dream was to be an author. So I dreamed of having my books on the library shelves, on the bookstores. And I just realized that dream this year.
Wow, no.
Yeah, it's been many years in the making to realize this dream. But in my job, because it wasn't viable for me to go and be an investigative journalist, war front time journalist kind of stuff, I ended up in the corporate world where the only writing I was doing was proposals and emails. So I told my ex-boyfriend, now husband, at that time, and said like, oh, I like writing. I thought I'll be in a job that I would do more writing, but I'm not. And he said, then why don't you just write a blog? So when I started a blog, I didn't know what to write at first because I'm not the kind of person. Back then in those days, blogs were all about here's what I ate, here's what I wore today, my outfit. Check out this.
The 2000s?
Yes, correct, right? Those are in the 2000s. That was blogs were. It's like your own personal diary online about life, right? About your crushes, about your friends, about your disputes. But I had certain beliefs and philosophies about what kind of writing I wanted to write. And I knew that I'm not that kind of person where I'll be like, hey, check out what I wore today, check out what I eat today. That doesn't really appeal to me. I wanted things whereby with words, if I could pen it down, it would still be useful and relevant, like even many years later. Just like the classic books in the library. You read them like 10, 20 years later and you still get something out of it. So that was the kind of writing that I wanted to write. And it started first at that point. I just saved my $20,000, which was a huge feat. I was really proud of myself. So that naturally became my very first topic because it was all I was talking about with my friends as well.
Wow, yeah. And what did you plan to do with that 20,000? And what did you do with that 20,000?
Part of it was to clear my student loans. So I had debt, so I cleared part of that. And then the rest of it, I invested.
Amazing. In equities?
Was it in equities back then? I don't really recall because it was 11 years ago, but yes, I think it probably was all in equities.
Okay, so fast forward to, somewhere in the middle of the 11 years, like you still working, you're still in a corporate job, you have kids, like bring us to some of these pivotal points in your growth as an investor, as a blogger, or now influencer. Yeah, and your personal professional growth as well.
Pivotal moments. Actually, every moment had its own learning point. So I'm a bit hard pressed to think of pivotal moments. But I think emotionally, one of the key turning points was when I became a mom. Because giving birth to your child changes a lot of things. And going from being single to married is not as big a change as becoming a parent because you now have someone whose life is 100% dependent on you. So I can't even forget to change the diaper or forget to feed or fall asleep. And you can't. You have to be 100% on the ball about a lot of things because someone's life is at stake and that poor helpless baby cannot do anything for themselves. So when I became a mom and I was still the workaholic that I was, even though I was on maternity leave, I was still creating content on my blog. I was writing, I was still researching. And while I was on maternity leave from my job, my clients were still calling me. I remember I was literally breastfeeding my kid with one arm and holding my phone on the other arm. And this client, who was also a female, by the way, was chasing me for or something like a mini work crisis. It was not like super big. It was very minor. It was important, but not like
Yeah.
huge. But she was like, yeah, no, your colleagues are not as responsive as you. You need to get on this right now. And I'm like, I'm breastfeeding right now. I'm on maternity leave. Like, I've handed over to my colleague and she'll be there to help you. And she say, no, but they're just not as responsive and you're very responsive. So, it really made me think that I am responsive and it is part of my work ethics to make sure I'm always there for my team, for my clients, or whoever I'm accountable for. But people were not respecting that boundaries.
Mm.
And I could not stop them from overstepping it as well. So that really very, very firmly cemented in me that I need to really quickly hit financial freedom so that work becomes optional and I get to choose who I want to work with and deal with instead of having to take this client call at this point, even though I'm on maternity leave, because I'm worried what if she complains to my boss and I lose my job for not being on the ball, even though it's not my fault. Right. So that was one key moment. And after that, I became a lot more deliberate. I also, because when you become a mom, you also start thinking about finances for your kids. So that changed my financial journey and added an extra element instead of me just investing for retirement and financial freedom. And then when my second kid came along, that was also another pivotal turning point. And at that point, I started to realize that if raising one kid was hard, raising another is even harder. So, Sarah, I don't know how you're going to handle when your baby comes out as well. But it's not just about, having to take care of another kid, but it's also your attention,
Mm.
your time. You don't get extra hours in a day. And when your kid falls sick, they tend to spread viruses to one another. So they take turns falling sick and they're off, they can't go to school. But we only get 6 days of childcare leave every year as an employee. And if you take anything more than that, you have to deal with office politics of how your bosses may perceive you. And if your office is not a very family-friendly, family-oriented environment, that could have some invisible repercussions on your career. When choosing between whether to promote you or another colleague who is single or maybe married but no kids, that person is more likely to get chosen because in many scenarios, they are more responsive and they take leave, right? So the bosses see them more, their visibility is in office a lot more, and they get certain perks that parents don't get. And that was when I realized, okay, I need to take more control into my own hands as well, because why should the fate of my career be completely dependent on things that I cannot change? I am not going to sacrifice my family life just to get that promotion. I will work hard, I'll get what I can, and everything else, then I will find other ways to make up for it on my own. So I started to question, why did I want a promotion? Was it just a title or was it the money as well? And I realized that the money played a very big part of it. So if I could not get a promotion or a full raise to the level that the delivery needs to be at in terms of my time and commitment, then can I make the money elsewhere so that I'm still happy? And fast forward to today, I'm really glad that I have achieved that. So last year, I managed to make my side hustles, my writing and all my other gigs on the side grew so substantially over the years. It's all compounded as well, right? Because your reputation also compounds over time. So everything gets easier, everything grows bigger. And as that grew, I could finally go to my boss and say like, can I work out an arrangement now? So yeah, that is the journey of what I've been on. And it has been a 11-year journey.
Wow, that is amazing. So after becoming a mom, you started to rethink what success looked like for you at work. And that was when you started, can you say, like doubling down on your side gig? But it was at the same time, it was also compounding naturally, I suppose, from the hard work that you had put in before that.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I really doubled down because I still had the same 24 hours in a day, but now I had, and if you take away 6 to 7 hours for sleep, right,
Right.
you are really only left with about 12 to 14 hours to divide between work, your workouts, and your
Mm.
kids. I have huge respect for my friends who are still employees and who manage their kids, their households without a helper and still manage to do their workouts. I think it's incredible because I can no longer imagine how it would be like if I think back to when I work my 9 to 6 job.
Mm.
I cannot imagine or phantom how I can wake up at say 5 to 6, send my primary school kid to school, and then squeeze in a workout, quickly shower, rush and catch the bus to an office, and then work all the way, go for lunch, come back at 6, rush back to pick my preschool kid up before the 7 p.m. deadline, and God forbid there is a train breakdown or a train delay, and pick up, bring back home, cook dinner. How do people even cook dinner if they don't have helpers? Feed them, shower them, do whatever homework that they need, make sure that they sleep, and then finally do whatever I need to do. And there's a lot of things that we parents need to do too, right? There's household bills that need to be paid. There's thinking about our taxes, thinking about longer term structuring, investment portfolios, and lots of admin and errands to be done, and even taking care of our own parents. So I really have no idea. I cannot imagine going back to that life anymore. I like this life now where I have a lot more flexibility. And I can very confidently say that in terms of my work, I'm always on, but I have never once sat down to count whether my contribution is equivalent to the 40 hours that an employee does in a week, because I get to space out my time a bit more. I don't get into this fixed schedule that someone dictates of me. I can clear things at 2 a.m. if I need to. I can clear things on a Sunday if I need to. And that has really worked out for me.
Talk a bit about how you earn that trust or credibility at work to be able to gain that control. And like you said, you also negotiated an arrangement, right, with your company to be able to be more flexible. If you can, share some tips for us who are really looking for that. And so many of our listeners are, right?
I wouldn't call myself an expert, but I'll be happy to share what has worked for me. So in the course of my career, and I run the podcast which you were on, the Wise and Shine podcast, where we talk a lot about careers and career mindset, professionalism. So I've learned a lot from the guests who have come from our shows as well. And if I were to condense all of that learning together, the tips I would have to give and what I've practiced for myself as well is that you have to make sure that you are visible, that people see and understand the work that you do. Not every role in an organization is as visible, right? Certain roles are more celebrated. Certain roles get more interaction. But you have to think for yourself, in what way can you build that visibility? Sometimes it is about just spending time with other colleagues from other departments. Sometimes it's about sharing a case study of something that your team has done, which you know can inspire or would be useful to the organization when they send out their monthly or quarterly newsletter or whatever HR sends out, right? Or other times it can be at the company events, making sure that people see you're a team player, or if you're a leader and you want people to know and recognize that you're a leader. Even playing the activities, it can be as simple as someone needs to take charge, right? You can be that person to rally, come on guys, let's do. Or if you're the strategies, you're in that team bonding event, you can start to strategize. So whatever your skill set are, whatever you want people to remember you for, you need to make sure you build opportunities for that visibility to show up. In my job, I was very lucky because my role involved building something that did not exist before. Build up new processes. I had to write new rule and guidebooks for the teams. I had to train up. I had to set standards. I had to set KPIs. I had to look at data and then figure out, are we doing, is this good? Is this bad? Without a lot of visibility into our competitors, how do we benchmark? I had to figure out what is reasonable for the company to work on and what is not. Not every client demand needs to be met, especially when they don't pay us extra for it, right? So all of these things, I had to write and build that playbook. And because I was in this role where it was so new, the people who were working with me knew and could see that it was not easy and I was building all these things. And my CEO could see that as well because we had to report the revenue numbers up to him. So these are the things that I did. And when you get invited to share, you should definitely jump at that opportunity. So I did have on a few occasions just to share about what we're doing and why, or like certain client wins that we had served in that month. So these actually bring you in front of everyone else, including senior management. But of course, having said that, building visibility is one tip. The other important tip is you need to make sure you meet your own KPIs first. So you work really closely. I work very closely with my manager and I was very upfront with her. Luckily for me, she's a mom as well. Like she also prioritized her family as number one. When I look at her calendar to try and book meetings, she has this slot that is black. You cannot touch it. And that's because that's the time when her daughters come home and she sits down to have a meal with them or to just catch up with them on how was their day at school. And it's untouchable. So, I like that. And when I joined the company, I sat down, I talked to her, and I was very upfront about the potential challenges that I could face, such as, how do you deal with if your kids are sick? Taking her counsel, her mentorship, and learning from. And then being very transparent if things happen. So if I'm not able to dial in at 9 a.m., because my kid is sick and I need to take care of him first, I would make sure I better message and say, I'm sorry, I'm being held up, and then explain instead of go and handle the kid and then account for it later. Because you don't give an account of why you're missing, people tend to jump to conclusions or they make their own assumptions. And I find that is never healthy. So being transparent with all the information upfront, your kid can wait for just 30 seconds while you type that message to your boss. But that helps your boss to trust you. And that's how you build trust credibility over time. Then you let your results speak for itself. Then you make sure people are seeing the results that you have achieved. And all three of them will then work to get you to where you want to be in your career.
Wow, I love that. So find ways to be visible, whether it's formal or informal activities at work, being proactively communicating to anticipate challenges, like you said, anticipating if your kid is sick, and then obviously doing good work and letting it all three kind of combine together. I love that. I feel like I just went through a bit of a mini coaching session.
I think every listener for your podcast should be able to apply this, right? Because it doesn't matter how senior you are or how junior you are. These 3 tips I feel helps everyone in every career.
I love that. And how has that for you today, like yielded benefit in how you arrange your time at work today? Can you talk a little bit about that? How you had a conversation with your boss to start maybe, being more flexible with your time and your work?
Right. So I think in every discussion with your bosses, it is really important to put yourself in your boss' shoes. So that's when I first sat down to think about it. I didn't go into the discussion unprepared, right? I had to think first, like, this is what I want. But what does my boss want? How does what I want eat into what he wants? How can he give me what I want while still getting what he wants? Yeah. So when I sat down to think about that, and I was writing out, okay, to my boss, what matters is results. What matters is clients are still happy, revenue doesn't drop, and standards are still being met. Costs are kept low as much as they can so that you maximize profits. So I was writing down all these things. And then I look at my side and what I wanted, which was time flexibility. And then I asked myself, okay, but will it kill my boss if they can't reach me anytime during the 9 to 6 because I'm no longer at the desk? And I realized it will affect them if it is urgent, right? So if there's a fire to be put out, not in the literal sense, there is a work crisis, and they call me, I need to be readily available. So if I could give that promise, then else matters. So if you call me at 2 p.m., but it's for a non-urgent matter, I would say drop me an email and I'll get back to you in 24 hours. Yeah, because it's not urgent. But anything urgent, I always give that promise. Just call me, and if you need me on the ground for any physical meetings, as long as it's upfront, communicated in my calendar, I will be there. So I look at that, and then when I went into the discussion, it was really offering, look, boss, I would like to get this, but I don't want to affect the work that we do too much. Can we look at a win-win? Here's my proposal. And we work through that proposal to reach a stage where everyone won.
Wonderful. Yeah, I resonate with that very much. And I think it's not one and done. I think it's continuous improvement and tweaking along the way as, work changes or new team members come or new clients or customers come on, right? So same like you, yeah, in a more client-facing role, I am definitely saying even though I have carved out specific times where I say I will not be at work per se, I will be available if there's a, customer matter or like some exhibition I have to go for example, because I'm in a sales role. And so it's a give and take, right? Because we need to know what are the ultimate goals that we have to achieve and prioritize around that. So I think it really depends on the type of role and yeah, building that credibility and trust along in parallel as well, right? Like you said, visibility, communication, and doing good work. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think it's really helpful. And talk a bit about your side gigs. How do you grow them? And what have your lessons been in, blogging and teaching about finances, learning about social media?
So interestingly, a lot of people are under the assumption that I was very strategic and there was certain hacks that I used to grow. But if I look back at my journey, the honest answer is I really didn't. Like, I have seen friends who are, for example, really good with SEO. And we think of SEO before they produce a content. So it naturally will do well, and then it just writes on itself, right? And hearing from them how they did it, I look at myself like, oh, no, I didn't do any of that. I should have, right? But when I look at my own journey and the growth, the things that stand out to me, which I would share with everyone else, is to just focus on two things. One is to be authentic. When you're authentic, you don't have to pretend. And I always share this with my friends. Don't tell lies because you won't be able to keep track and remember what lies you've told. But you will always remember the truth, right? So just truth. And if you don't want some things you don't want to say, then just don't say it. Yeah. And if people learn about it and they confront you later, you will still know and remember because it was the truth. But it's better to just do it that way than to lie and cover up and say something else which you won't remember later on. So be 100% authentically you.
Can I double click on that? Because that's something we hear all the time. Can you give me an example of what that means for you, Dawn, or Budget Babe? Like, what does authenticity mean, and what's an example of how you show that?
So there are quite a few examples. One would be the things that I take on. I think it's notorious by now. So I've heard from my friends who work in media and advertising that I don't have a fantastic reputation when it comes to the agencies because I am famous for rejecting a lot of things. And sometimes to the point where some brands or PR agencies are afraid to even reach out to me because they're like, in their mind, they'll be like, oh, she'll just say no anyway. But that's not always true. I do say no a lot, and people that reputation has spread. But I am very selective of what I say yes to, precisely because I know it does run with my reputation over time. You might think doing something now, you can delete it later on and people will forget about it. But the truth is, when you write online, when you're public, there's going to be someone who remembers. So I am very, very selective. I have certain rules that I've set up for myself, which is if it's not something that I would personally use or pay for or do for myself, then I wouldn't accept that. But later on, then I realized I was being very restrictive because not everyone is like me, right? And for example, the best credit card for me is not going to be the same for someone else because we shop at different merchants. But that doesn't mean the other card isn't good. And that doesn't mean I can't talk about it. So then I add one more rule, which is if I don't personally use it or pay for it, would I recommend my best friends who are going to come after me if it's a bad recommendation, right? And they'll hold me accountable if it's bad. So I started using my best friends, my relatives, my I, in a heartbeat, recommend and say the same thing about this publicly as I would to them. And if the answer is yes, then I would take that on. So there are a lot of deals that I walk away from. I don't think it gels with who I am as a person. So I don't take them on.
Well, then thank you so much for accepting, to be on our podcast and make it work. We're obviously nowhere like a merchant or we're small. And I'm so honored now to hear that despite that reputation, you were very readily said yes to me. So that makes me feel so happy and so honored.
No, not at all. I mean, we had a fun chat when you came on the podcast and when we met up for lunch. And yeah, I really like the work that you're doing here with Make It Work. I do believe and I do agree that there isn't really a guidebook or a playbook, right? We just kind of have to figure things out as we go along. And the best way to figure things out is to hear from other people, just maybe ahead of you by just a little bit, but you can learn from them and then you can carve out your own path. So I truly believe that all these kind of podcasts work whenever it aligns with a vision of what I think it should be. I'm more than happy to help and be on it.
Thank you. Okay, so number one lesson is be yourself, be authentic. And for you, that was trying to agreeing to things that were aligning with you, or at least people in your close circle. What else are the lessons that you have?
The second one was then just about perseverance. And you can only persevere in something. So it's all about compounding, right? When you persevere, you compound. But you only can do that when you genuinely enjoy or find meaning in what you are doing. So for me, my strengths and what I like doing would be to write, to teach. I'm not super passionate about finance, but I'm passionate about the impact and the freedom that it can bring. So I focus on that. And that's how I went through learning about finance is so dry. And it's actually not dry today anymore because we have a lot more resources. But when I first started learning it in the 2000s, it was really, really dry. It was so technical and it was all like the super geek kind of talk. No one was finding it in an easy manner. And I guess maybe that's what people have told me. They like how I condense and distill things in such an easy to understand manner. But it wasn't as if I was like, let me do it in this way so I can go viral. No, it was just because I'm really struggling to understand. And the
Oh.
best way to understand is to write it down in a simple way that someone reading your notes would understand it. So I was doing that, and that unexpectedly became what people enjoyed and like to read, and then that grew. And the more I continued to do it, I keep learning new things, I keep sharing, and then you start to see results, not just your own results, but the results of the lives that you have impacted. And that then gave me meaning to continue on and continue to do what I do. The fun thing about investing and writing also is that it is a never ending journey. So I get mentally challenged as well all the time. And there's still growth even now. Like what Warren Buffett says. And I guess that's why he and his partner, Charlie Munger, were so sharp, even though they were in their 90s. It's really because when you just keep studying and you're a lifelong learner, you keep improving, life never gets boring.
So keep learning and enjoy that learning, right? Like keep doing what you love and what keeps you at least stimulated, right?
Exactly. And then I show this to my kids because I want them to also think and look at us as role models. So I want my kid to see I am working. I'm not just lazing around. I want my kid to see I am studying as well. Look, mommy's reading a book. And that makes them read books too, right? Yesterday, it was quite funny. My husband told me, hey, I challenged your son to read, and he read faster than me. He is like you. I'm like, oh, is it? It was 7 years of nurturing. And then I went to my kid and say, hey, I heard that you beat daddy at speed reading. Very good. So are you going to read Harry Potter at primary 3 like mommy did? I don't know if you'll get there. Harry Potter is a very tough read, right? But it really is like showing, because I think it's very hard for our kids, for us as parents, or for me, to try and make my kid do something if they don't see me doing it either. So I tell them, you need to go to school because you need to learn. As you become smarter, you can then grow up and choose work that you like to do and be good at it and be paid well so you don't have to worry about money. So I have to also demonstrate this to them. And I don't want them to work and study and forget about their health. So I also show them that, hey, mommy's going to the gym, or I'm going for my workout class, my Pilates class, my strength training class. You should also work your muscles. Yeah. So I try to live a life where when my kid looks at me, I want them to think I'm proud that she's my mom. And that's also a lifestyle. That's the vision of the life that they can imagine themselves leading as well. So I'm very deliberate when I think of what do I take on and what do I not take on. So all of it gels together.
Yeah, actually, you're answering the question that I always ask my guests as well. Like, what do you want your kids to learn about how you manage all these? So anything else to add there? I mean, they're still so young. How do you teach them about finances, if at all?
I actually have some stuff coming out. So
Oh.
a lot of parents have asked me, and in the beginning, I didn't want to do it yet because I'm still learning, right? I need to see that my methods have succeeded on my kids before I'm confident to share those methods with others. But I've been also talking to other parents who have older kids to hear how they use, and they have the results to show already. So putting all together, like I am launching something soon, and it's gonna be like something that people can learn for free, and I'll announce it on my Instagram when it's up. But it's a pretty major collab with one of the local banks, so we're really excited to have that up, and it's gonna be about empowering parents to teach kids about money. But I would say at the end of the day, the last thing I would give to your listeners is really like find your own way to make it work. And if you might not have the answers, you won't feel like you ever have all the answers. But even if you feel imposter syndrome, it's just you knowing and your body telling you that you're not there yet. It doesn't mean that you will never get there. So take that imposter syndrome, take that inferiority complex, take all those feelings of inadequacy and negative feelings about yourself, about your life, about your finances, and change it to, what is this telling me? What gap exists? And then how can I bridge that gap? So if you think that you're not in a great place when it comes to your career, what do you want to do with your manager, with your boss, or maybe switch it in different industry? What do you want to do to close that gap? If you're not having the best finances of your life, you're not in a great financial state, what can you do to change that? Would it be to earn more, to spend less, to invest, or to do all three? So that's how I always look at things. And I hope that people also find their own way to make it work, just like how I've just bumbled through life and found my own ways to make it work.
Amazing. So, Dawn, looking ahead a little bit, what plans do you have and where do you hope to grow yourself personally, professionally with these different, this myriad of work, body of work that you are undertaking?
I'll share with you an open secret. So my personal dream is that when I leave this earth, I want it to be such that a lot of people are going to be very sad because of the impact that I've left on their life. And I want it to be in a positive impact. So I want people to remember me long after I've gone for the way I have maybe inspired them or pushed them to change their life for the better. So I measure my own success and growth by the number of lives that I have changed and I can change. So over the years, that has been very meaningful for me as I keep hearing testimonials from people. And that has also guided me on how can I build or create content or build products that can help and reach out to more people beyond what I can. In the beginning, when I first started Budget Babe, and there were requests from people who wanted to learn from me, I would do in-person events. But then I realized that there was a limit, right? Because there's the size of the booking, the room, and then like if you book a bigger room, there's more cost. So there were a lot of limitations. And then I can't help people who are not physically in Singapore. So then with COVID, that showed us we could move online. Yeah, so I moved online and I'm really just looking at what ways can I, with my existing knowledge and expertise or connections, can I make a difference to people's lives. I think one of the best products that I built this year is the Investing 101 Challenge. So I built this because I was getting so many messages from so many people saying, Dawn, I've just discovered your account. How do I start investing? Then I used to say, oh, I've written so much on my blog. Please check it out. And they were like, there's too many articles. I can't read. I'm a mom or parent. Is there like a easier way to learn everything? So when a lot of people started asking me the same question, it made me think, okay, how can I solve this gap then? It's a bit hard to tell them, go and read all the 800 plus entries on my blog. And some of them might be outdated, right? So I'm like, okay, let me put something together. So I designed this Investing 101 Challenge as a 7-day crash course to help people go from zero to hero within just 7 days. And I'm really proud of this product because I teach it in a way whereby it's super beginners friendly and it helps you to be empowered with your own skill set to invest for yourself. So whether or not someone wants to invest DIY or through an insurance agent or through equities or through bonds or through unit trust, it doesn't matter what, how, or who you want to invest with. This investing challenge gives them the knowledge and skills to be able to do that and do a good job at it. So for someone who wants to invest through their insurance agent, for example, the challenge will help them to understand the different tools in the market, what are the trade-offs, how to look at them, and then figure out whether your insurance agent making you an introduction that is in your interest or in their interest. Right. And then if you're a DIY investor, it's about helping you understand here are all the different tools in the market. What do you want to, now that you know them, what do you want to use? And how do you want to construct your own portfolio? So I've also designed a worksheet that people can fill up to create their own portfolio. And it's actually take back control. So it answers the question, how do I invest? How do I start investing? And this is all done in just 7 days.
Amazing. And it's online, so you can do it on your own. And I'm so thankful today that, Dawn, you've also extended a special discount to listeners. So if you use the code MIW, and we'll put all the links and details inside the show notes, you get a special discount for this 7-day Investing 101 course that I think everyone should definitely learn. It's one of the things that I feel, having left school, everyone says, I wish I learned how to, do finances or understand finances better, manage my finances better, right? Despite having gone to university. So yeah, really thank you for this. And thank you for the conversation today, Dawn. Really appreciate it. Yeah. And wishing you all the best for your future and leaving that legacy that I'm sure is already starting to grow very meaningfully. And I'm definitely one of the people that have been impacted. So yeah.
Thank you. Yes, I hope that regardless of whether it is through my social media channels, my blog, or even my book, which is now available in countries that I have never even stepped foot in before, such as India and I think Australia or New Zealand, I'm not sure, but it's being distributed like globally. So I really hope that this legacy continues and more people will learn how to take back control of their finances and build a life that allows them to escape from the limitations of money, just like how I've experienced for myself. Thank you for having me on this podcast.
Thank you, Dawn.
Thank you for listening to Make It Work, where we uncover inspiring stories of modern working mamas in Asia who have redefined their careers whilst putting family first. Please help others discover the show by leaving a review and rating on wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, and TikTok. Meanwhile, here's to you. making it work.